Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit up to $250. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back, all from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hi everyone, I'm David Aragona, and this is the TimeformUS preview of the 153rd Belmont Stakes, the final leg of the Triple Crown. Obviously no Triple Crown on the line this year with different winners of the Kentucky Derby and Preakness Stakes, but we do have a very competitive edition of the Belmont Stakes. 8 runners signed on, 5 of them actually exiting the Kentucky Derby, led by the morning line favorite Essential Quality. And let's throw up the field for this race, and you'll see that Essential Quality is listed at 2-1 on the morning line, which I created as the morning line maker for the NYRA tracks. But there are 5 horses that I pegged at single digits because there are 5 major contenders in this race, all with a major claim to win this Belmont Stakes. Essential Quality, obviously one of those horses coming out of the Kentucky Derby. He finished just behind Hot Rod Charlie, who I've got as the third choice at 7-2 on the morning line. In between them is the recent Preakness Stakes winner, ROMBAUER. He was a dominant winner of that race, and the big question for ROMBAUER is, can he carry that success over into the Belmont Stakes while stretching out to the 1.5-mile distance? Also, contenders on the line are the number 6 Known Agenda and Rock Your World, 2 of those other horses coming out of the Kentucky Derby. Before we get into the major contenders, let's take a look at the TimeformUS pace projector for this race. And given that it's the Belmont Stakes going the 1.5-mile distance, a really demanding trip for the 3-year-olds, we're unlikely to see any horse ridden too aggressively in the early stages. That said, it's no surprise to see that the chicklet all the way on the right, the number 7 Rock Your World, projected to be on the lead in this race. He was the gate-to-wire winner of the Santa Anita Derby. Obviously did not get to show the early speed that he's been known for in the Kentucky Derby last time when he lost all chance at the start. We'll talk about that a bit more in a little bit. And that's the reason why he's not shown on a clear lead, because the pace projector does take into account that Kentucky Derby running line where he was far back throughout. But based on the Santa Anita Derby, he would be likely to have a clear lead in the early stages of this race. The number 5 is Francisco de Ina, the long shot, who did show some tactical speed in the Preakness. He could be close, as could the number 4 Hot Rod Charlie, who got a stalking trip in the Kentucky Derby and was the gate-to-wire winner of the Louisiana Derby in his prior start. You know that the horses that will be looking to close in this race are actually the 3 Todd Pletcher trained runners, the number 1 Bourbonic, the number 8 Overtook, and his major player, the number 6 Known Agenda, who is another one that wants to close from off of the pace. Let's get into some of the major contenders in this Belmont Stakes, and we're going to begin with the now horse coming into this race. That is the recent Preakness Stakes winner, the number 3 ROMBAUER. And let's take a look at his victory in that Preakness Stakes, because it was a visually impressive score. He is a horse that was a little bit unheralded coming into this race, getting dismissed at 11-1. All the money went to the 2 Bob Baffert trainees and Midnight Bourbon, the latter of which was the runner-up in this race. And Midnight Bourbon struck the front at the top of the stretch like he would be tough, but ROMBAUER really kicked into another gear late. He just ran right by that rival and won going away at the end of this race. This was going 1 mile and 3/16, and he's going to have to stretch out the extra 5/16 of a mile going this Belmont Stakes distance. That's a question mark for him, as it is for everybody. But the big question mark for ROMBAUER is, where did that Preakness triumph come from? Because that was not the strongest Triple Crown race that we've seen from a quality standpoint, from top to bottom, just based on the depth of talent in the field. The Preakness didn't really measure up to the Kentucky Derby. That said, ROMBAUER still ran a 1:22 TimeformUS speed figure, a number that matches the winning number that Medina Spirit got in the Kentucky Derby. So he ran a legitimate performance in the Preakness. It's just a matter of whether he can do it against tougher competition, coming back in 3 weeks, holding that form, given that he had never run that well in the past. So I'm a little bit skeptical that ROMBAUER can get it done. He's going to take much more money this time, whereas he was an 11-1 last time. I've got him at 3-1 in the morning line. So at that kind of price, ROMBAUER was not for me in this Belmont Stakes. I am mostly focusing on the horses that are coming out of the Kentucky Derby, and there are 4 of them that I want to talk about. Let's begin with Essential Quality, the number 2, who is the morning line favorite in this Belmont Stakes, and he is the horse to beat in this spot. The Kentucky Derby last time, I think he got the trip that he was expected to get. He was wide around both turns, but when you break from post position number 14, that's bound to happen. I thought that Luis Ayes did everything that he could to get this horse into a forward position coming around the far turn, and he was in position position to win this race at the top of the stretch and just couldn't quite forge past the leaders late, finishing fourth, beaten a length. Though I thought he ran his race, and if he improves on that going the mile and a half, he can certainly get it done here. Let's take a look back when he won the Bluegrass, just to see one of his recent victories. Obviously, this was his 5th in a row, and he was undefeated coming out of this race into the Kentucky Derby, with the Derby being his first career defeat. We saw the good essential quality in this Bluegrass. He's got a lot of grit and determination. He was able to forge past highly motivated at the end of this race. And we also saw that dimension that he has where he's able to show some tactical speed. He obviously came from a bit farther off the pace in the Kentucky Derby as he had in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, but it's a nice feather in his cap that he can be placed close to the pace as he might want to be in this Belmont Stakes, since the Belmont typically is not a race that favors deep closers. So I think essential quality has the versatility and the talent to win this Belmont Stakes. I just don't really view him as having a major ability edge over this field. And as the favorite, I think some others are going to offer better value. One of those could be the number 4, Hot Rod Charlie, who actually finished ahead in front of Essential Quality when they met in the Kentucky Derby last time. He arguably had the better trip in that race, as Flavien Prat did a really good job getting him to settle in the early stages of that race. He saved a bit more ground around both turns and peeled out into the clear with plenty of time to make a run in the stretch of that race. But kind of like everybody else who was chasing Medina Spirit home in that Kentucky Derby, he really couldn't make any late headway, as really nobody changed position through the stretch of that Kentucky Derby. 2 back in the Louisiana Derby, he obviously was ridden forwardly, sent to the front in that race, and he led from gate to wire. We'll see what tactics Flavien Prat decides to employ in this Belmont Stakes. You would imagine that Hot Rod Charlie is going to the front, but it would not be surprising if Hot Rod Charlie is chasing him right in behind in the early going, and potentially he gets first run on Rock Your World if that one does not go on and get the distance, and that could make Hot Rod Charlie dangerous. I know some people might be concerned that maybe he doesn't have that will to pass horses, since we haven't really seen him do it in his 3 losses surrounding that Louisiana Derby. That said, he obviously possesses a lot of quality, and he's going to be a better price than Essential Quality, so I think he's a major player in this race. The 2 other horses that I want to talk about coming out of the Kentucky Derby are 2 that finished farther back in the pack. One of those is the number 7, Rock Your World. And if there's a horse that did have a significant excuse in the Kentucky Derby, it's definitely this horse. He really lost all chance at the start. His race was just over when he broke a little bit slowly. Joel Rosario's foot briefly came out of the iron. He got slammed from the side by Highly Motivated, and he was just placed towards the back of the pack, which is not going to be a path to success for a horse that had won his only prior dirt start in gate-to-wire fashion. And let's take a look at that victory 2 back in the Santa Anita Derby, because based on this performance, Rock Your World is a major player in this Belmont Stakes and a candidate to wire this field. I just wonder if he's going to be able to duplicate this performance going a mile and a half in just the 3rd dirt start of his career. He was obviously primed and ready to deliver a top performance in the Santa Anita Derby. It's a race that John Sadler had been pointing for since he ran this horse a couple of times on the turf. He always talked about the Santa Anita Derby being a potential goal for this horse. And he had such a negative experience in the Kentucky Derby. Given that he's so lightly raced, I do think you have to wonder a little bit about whether he can bounce back from that. They're asking a lot of this inexperienced horse in just his 5th career start. I do think he's going to get the right trip in this race, setting the pace. I just wonder if we're going to see that same electrifying performance that he put forth in the Santa Anita Derby. So I took a slightly negative view of Rock Your World. I am, however, interested in the other horse that finished farther back in the Kentucky Derby. That is one of the Todd Pletcher trainees, the number 6, Known Agenda. Now, I don't think Known Agenda had a major excuse from a trip point in the Kentucky Derby. He did have some minor trouble coming by the stands for the first time. He was so far back at the first call, 17th and 16th, after a 1.25 mile in the race, because he did get a little shuffled back coming under the wire the first time. But that in part was because he drew the rail, and he's not a horse that possesses a ton of tactical speed. So as others were coming over and going forward, coming by the stands for the first time, Known Agenda just was unable to hold this position, and that's why he got shuffled back to the rear of the field coming around the first turn. He did eventually make some minor progress, always stuck on the rail, but passing a few horses in the lane. Irad Ortiz had some trouble finding a clear path for him in the stretch, but at the end of the day, even if he had gotten outside, he was never going to be in the top 6 runners at the end of that race. I just wonder if maybe the Kentucky Derby was not the right fit for a horse that really doesn't have much of a turn of foot and was never going to be able to extricate himself from traffic. Two back in the Florida Derby, we can take a look at that victory when he won by over 2 lengths. Well, he didn't earn the fastest speed figure in this race. I think that we saw the good known agenda here and how dangerous he can be when his rider is able to get him into a more forward position and make a steady run into the race, as he did coming around the far turn. You saw in this replay, known agenda was already striking the front by the time the field got to the quarter pole, and he's able to just grind away the victory and run away at the end of this race. I don't think he's a horse that's going to have any problem with the 1.5 mile distance, given that he's by Curlin with some European stamina breeding on the bottom side of his pedigree. Furthermore, Todd Pletcher is known as having a really good sense of which of his 3-year-olds are going to be well suited to the Belmont Stakes, and he's been talking about known agenda as a Belmont horse for a long time. Todd Pletcher obviously has had a lot of success on this race, even beyond winning it, with horses like Taprit, and prior to that, he's had some long shot runner-up finishers like Commissioner and Destin. So he's a horse that definitely knows how to, a trainer, I should say, that definitely knows how to win this race. And known agenda to me just feels like a horse that can really take a step forward, stretching out to the 1.5 mile distance. He's going to have to, but I also think he's likely to be the 5th choice in this race. I've got him pegged at 6-1 on the morning line, so he is my top pick in this Belmont Stakes. I put him on top, and I'm using him over the number 4 Hot Rod Charlie and the number 2 Essential Quality, taking a slight stand against the number 3 ROMBAUER, your Preakness winner, as well as Rock Your World, who has that inexperience to overcome in the 153rd Belmont Stakes, the 11th race on Saturday at Belmont Park.